Hello, hello, happy Thursday. Thank you all for joining. I'm so happy you're here because I know we're going into a holiday weekend and you're probably super busy. So I'm very impressed you're here. So we'll go through this very quickly because I know some of you were just on a webinar on the Brivity platform with me just a little bit ago. So lots of stuff, right? Lots of things to get ready for as we power into the spring. And today's a fun topic. I love this one. We're going to talk about creating a five-star service experience. And I also want to make a little commitment to all of you. In a month or so, I'm going to get someone on the calendar who I think has been one of the most masterful people I have ever met when it comes to getting and utilizing his five-star reviews. So this will be part one. And then part two, I'm going to bring in someone super cool in the next few weeks to share some tips with you. So if you want to go ahead and just type in the chat box your name, where you're from, a quick hello. And if you've got something special that you do personally to deliver that five-star experience to your clients, hey, please feel free to share it as we go along, right? Because we all need new and fresh ideas. So thank you guys. I can see you there all over the country. Awesome. All right, well, let's hit it. Let me make sure I don't screw up my mouse. Okay, so I'm Deputy Grote, CEO and co-founder of Forward Coaching. As many of you know, I started selling real estate at the age of 18. And my broker said something to me then. He said, if you send your clients a Christmas card once a year, they will be your clients for life. Well, that was a much simpler time. Now we all know there's more competition. There's more people trying to win their business than ever before. And yet, still, that opportunity to shine as their wise advisor, to do the touches and the things we do to create that customer loyalty. And when we do a phenomenal job for them, to collect those reviews and testimonials. And in light of all of the things that are going on in the real estate industry and the changes around having buyer broker agreements that now will have the compensation that you're charging inserted in them, more than ever, we're going to need that social proof, that value prop, that you deliver that five-star experience and that you can quantify that with your reviews. So how do we create that wow experience? So let's break it down. A recent business study said that it's much more important to make life easy for our customers than it is to occasionally delight them. Okay, so let's think about how that applies to our business. I'm thinking about a loan officer that did a refi for us last year. And ultimately, the loan closed. He got us an incredible, I felt like he did an incredible job on the rate. All of that was fine. And it was, there were a few wow moments. But generally speaking, the communication was inconsistent and the information wasn't always clear. And I often felt like I was hunting him down. So when you leave that scenario, the wow moments might be overshadowed by the fact that he did not make the life easy for me. He did not make that experience easy. So it's cool to deliver those wow moments. And some of you are really good at pulling the fat out of the fire on those deals. But let's really take a good look at our business and say, where are the gaps? Is my service making their life easy? And I wonder if we surveyed all of your active clients, your active sellers, your buyers that you're working with, buyers in your pending pipeline, if we surveyed them today, would they give you 5 stars across the board, right? Would they say that they feel that special touch, that they can always reach you if they need you, that you do what you promise, that you deliver consistently? And I always think of it like sometimes when we get complaints from customers, some of them, no matter what you do, they're just impossible to please, right? They just have these crazy expectations that they can call you at midnight and you're going to answer the phone. There are those, certainly. Some are impossible to please. But occasionally we get those complaints or maybe a review that's not 5 stars from a really good customer. And it hurts. And I think, wow, if we're going to get a complaint from a great customer, then we really need to take that and say, what's the lesson learned? What's the missing link in my system that caused that to break down or happen? Because as sad as I am that that happened, I'm also very grateful that I discovered it and I can correct it. And then ask yourself, what are the excuses you might use for not delivering the 5-star experience? I'm overwhelmed. I'm so incredibly busy. I spoke with someone today, and they are truly busy. They've got kids that are in multiple sports and on travel teams, and then they're doing their real estate transactions, and they don't have a transaction coordinator, and they don't have any admin help, and they're a perfectionist. So while they have many buyers, they don't want to have a showing assistant because I don't want to give up control of my buyers. But then it's like that story about the monkey with his hand in the jar holding on to the banana, and he can't get the banana out because he won't let go. And so the monkey starves. So sometimes these breakdowns in the 5-star experience are because your bandwidth is stretched too thin, which means that's when we have to have a whole different conversation about what are you committing to? Can you have less spinning plates going on in your life? Are you using your technology properly as leverage? And I said to her, isn't it time to hire at least a transaction coordinator? Because you can pay as you go. So think about the excuses you're using, and then let's dive in and see what can we do to correct those. I'm too busy. Well, maybe we eliminate some things from your world or get some leverage or get some help. They're too demanding. In the book, Never Split the Difference, the hostage negotiator, Chris Voss, says, if you think your people are crazy, probably they're not. Probably you just haven't figured out what they really want. And often when we're working with clients of a different generation or a different culture, and they have a different way of communicating or a different style of what they need from you in order to make that a 5-star experience, we label them too demanding and tend to not make those proper adjustments. Or, well, that's someone else's job to do that. I was on a leadership meeting the other day, and my business partner, Ben Kinney, he talked about passing the baton in a relay race. And he said, when you pass the baton, you don't let go until the other party firmly has taken control. Well, how does that apply to you? Well, I told my lender to call them. Okay, but did your lender acknowledge you? Did you follow up to make sure the lender made the call and that the customer is satisfied? Or did we just pass the baton? Right? So be careful about that, because sometimes it's not you, it's the vendors and affiliates you're working with who may not be living up to your 5-star experience expectation. Now, if you have a team, even more dangerous. Well, I shared it with the team. I thought they would handle it. I handed it to my admin. I handed it to my director of ops. So while we don't want to be micromanagers, I think if we can have clarity with our team and affiliates, what do we consider 5-star? If we can avoid what I call arbitrary deadlines. So for example, if a client contacted you and said, oh, I'd like to have a CMA on my property, and you said, fine, we'll get it out to you today. Well, now that creates a pressure on your staff or on you, and it doesn't get done, and it gets out on Monday, which still isn't horrible, but it isn't what we promised. So instead of stating a deadline at what I call an arbitrary deadline, ask the customer, yeah, happy to do that CMA for you. Tell me, by when do you need it? Well, I'm going to see my attorney to update my trust in 2 weeks. I just need it before then. Perfect. If I have it to you by next Friday, would that be soon enough? Oh, yeah, that'd be awesome. Now, if I want to set a goal for myself to get it to them by Wednesday, hey, that still gave me a runway of time, and I'm still exceeding their expectations. And you know, guys, I think that's a big one. It's handing it off to others who don't conduct business the way you do, or making a time commitment or promise that was too tight, too unrealistic. You're not able to deliver on it, and it makes you look bad, right? And sometimes they ask for things or ask questions you don't have an answer to, and you just don't get back to them. I led a group of leaders this week, and this was the topic of the customer service conversation, because they said, well, often we get these really complicated questions, and we have to go in and we have to look at their portal and look at the platform and the technology, and we have to figure out the problem, and then we can get back to them to solve the problem. But that might be days or even a week later. And they have a lot of customer complaints. So I asked them, do you just acknowledge, I got your question, I'm on it, it's going to take a few days to research, I commit to getting back to you? And that's all, right? So sometimes we don't have the answers, we don't have the information, but to ignore their text or their email, unacceptable. You know, we all have our moments, right, where we're going through our own customer service dilemmas. And I try to learn from those and apply them to my business. We had a flood at our house, and our insurance, which is supposed to be very good, has turned out to be very bad. And our insurance agent really doesn't have any control over the adjuster, the estimates that they're, willing to pay. I get it that he doesn't actually have the power to make those decisions. But you know what? He doesn't even call back. And if you happen to call him, then you have to text him, and then he'll text you back and say, I haven't heard anything. Okay, but that's not good enough, right? Because here we are with a house that's been flooded and we can't live in it. And he doesn't call back. Now, do you think I will ever use him after this? No. Would I ever recommend him? No. Is it really actually even his fault? No. It's the underwriters. It's the guys and girls above him. But guess what? He's my guy. He's the only guy I know, and he's not getting back to me. So let's be careful about that, because if they're not happy, they will not refer to you. And if they're not happy, they will ultimately find a new agent. And it's kind of that scary social media time that if they're not happy, they won't just tell a friend, they might tell 500 friends on social media. So our goal needs to be, now more than ever before, exceed their expectation at every turn. Provide a smooth and consistent experience where complaints are few and seldom. So how do you do that? Well, I read a book recently and I thought, wow, what a great idea. And the general thought was, well, we may have our service standards and process, which is really good. If you've got something that's very consistent, set in stone, you guys follow that process all the time. It suggested, however, that we should still also ask the client or customer, describe to me, what is your ideal service scenario? So, for example, I could say to Karen, Karen, a part of my process is I'm going to check in with you every Monday, and then I'm going to send you a status report every Thursday. And here's how we're going to communicate if there's an offer. See, I could describe all of that to Karen, and then I could still say to Karen, is that enough for you? Tell me, do you prefer I email you, call, or text you? Is there anything else you need in terms of our service relationship for you to leave this transaction and say, that was 5-star? Debbie exceeded my expectation. So ask them to describe that to you. And I was talking about this with an agent, and they said, yeah, but what if they say, I expect you to call me every single day? I said, well, if that's how they are, isn't it good that you know that's how they are? Because now maybe you can have a conversation and manage those expectations and say, well, I could call you every day. And yet, if I call you every day and we spend all of our time together, that limits me from being on the phone finding prospects for your home. So do you think we could agree on something a little less frequent, right? So if you know what they want, we can either deliver it or negotiate to modify it and make sure that we have a communication plan that fits their expectation, right? And if you notice, I mentioned 5-star a few times. When I bring our guest on in a few weeks, and he talks about how he gathered all of his thousands of reviews, there was something I noticed that he does. He actually uses those words a lot. So here's what I mean. When he's sitting down with that buyer or seller in the first meeting, he may say, I'm going to do all of these things for you at such a high level because I believe in delivering 5-star service. And I want you to leave this transaction happy to give me a 5-star review. Now, then, as they're working together and he solves a problem and they're thanking him, he'll say, hey, no problem, happy to do it. That's just part of my 5-star service. So then maybe something else happens, goes along. He says, so are you getting the 5-star service from us that you need? See, he says it over and over and over in the transaction. And I went, it's a little bit like he's brainwashing them to be thinking 5-star, 5-star, 5-star. So now it's time to do the review, which granted, he did an awesome job all along. They should give him a 5-star, but that just makes it a little bit more likely, right? So kind of cool, I thought. Unreasonable hospitality. I don't know if that's a book. Maybe you want to chat in the chat box if you've read that book. It's by Will Guidara. And it's a book about 2 restaurant owners. And they wanted to win the #1. I think it was the Michelin Chef Award. You know that one. They wanted to be #1 and they weren't #1. And they felt like their restaurant was kind of stuck a little, plateauing in popularity. And they decided to do something that others did not and create this culture of unreasonable hospitality. And I don't want to go all the way through the book. You guys can read it, but I'll give you an example of the great lengths they would go to. And I might get it wrong a little bit because it's been a while since I read the book, but you'll get the gist. I think there was a couple and they had got married and they were going to depart that day for their honeymoon, and something happened. The flight got canceled. So they're at the restaurant for dinner and they're all sad because they should be at their beautiful beach in Tahiti, but instead they're at this, going to be going to dinner at this restaurant, and he knew about this. So he took the back room. They put some sand in there. They put some beach chairs. They made some pina coladas. And when they came into the restaurant, they took him to that private room and they said, hey, I know you couldn't make it to your beach, so we brought a little beach to you. Just all kinds of crazy things that they would do. And when someone came in for dinner, they would send them home with a little package of homemade granola, so that the next morning at breakfast, when they were remembering that great restaurant experience, they would be eating the granola. Little crazy things that no one does. So what are those crazy things? Doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of money. It's just about thinking about, what are my two service words? See, and I think those service words should be words, if you said them to the customer, they would understand, right? So for an example, long before I read the book, I had decided that I wanted the words here at Forward to be flawless and gracious. So I say to my team and I say to others, we will not always be flawless. We may make a mistake, but we are striving to be flawless. And we will always be gracious, because that we can 100% control. And I got to tell you guys, I hold the line on that. In every email response to a client, every customer service request, some may be a little out there. And yet when my team brings it to me, I always say, how do we handle this graciously? If there's a breakdown in a system or process, how do we make this flawless so the experience is flawless for the customer? So were they always delivering unreasonable hospitality? I'm sure they had a bad day or made a mistake or a moment, but that was their words. What are your words? And then get behind that and own that as your value prop. So it's unreasonable hospitality, and the author is Will Guidara. You'll love it. He's great. Okay. So our words are flawless and gracious. If you already have your two words, type them in the chat box. Share them with all of us. I think that, see, the fact when I say that to you about our words here at Forward, I don't say that to brag. I say that for accountability. Because if I put that out there to you, if you put your words out there to your clients and customers, it creates an accountability to live up to those words, right? So I could say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I want you to have a flawless experience. Our team will always be gracious. And in fact, that's the words that we run our business by. And if ever you are not having that experience with us, I am the person you come to. So if you have a large team, the larger that team grows, the harder it is to inspect that all things are being done in the flawless 5-star way that you prefer. So you got to have those checks and balances in there. And I remember reading the book, The Nordstrom Way. And, I don't mean to be rude if anybody has family working at Nordstrom, and I'm sure it's budget. They've cut staff down. But I've noticed that the Nordstrom of 10 years ago, the standards are not quite the Nordstrom of today. But back when this book was written, it was incredible, right? And they asked the writer, the CEO, they said, how do you train your people to be so nice? And he said, I don't. I hire nice people, and then I teach them to do the job. So if you're hiring an admin, if you're adding agents to your team, bringing people into your world, you got to look at them and say, does their personal culture and commitment to service match mine? Because if it doesn't, then I probably shouldn't hire them, right? So what are your service words? If you don't come up with them today, I want you to think about it, right? I want you to think about it. I want you to create those words. Yes, Lucy, we are recording this. You guys don't have to do a single thing to get it. It'll come to you automatically. So now you're flawless. You're amazing. You've done a great job, and they're thanking you. So there's something called theory of reciprocity. See, when you do something for someone, it creates this internal wish or need to repay that favor. So I'll give you an example. I was flying on a Southwest flight to an event, and I was a weakling that day. I don't know what was wrong with me. My suitcase was full. They stuff it full of forms and books and all kinds of things. And I'm like, oh, I can't get this suitcase. I was like, this is really going to be embarrassing. I cannot get this suitcase up in this bin. And a man saw me struggling, and he took it from me and he put it up there. And I had my jacket over my arm, and he goes, would you like me to put that up there? He folds it nicely, puts it up there. Of course, he's very tall and I'm not that tall. And I was like, wow. And then he shuts the bin. And I had that feeling of, I need to do something for him. And I was in the 1 to 15 row, so I got the free drink ticket. And I know I wasn't going to be drinking because I was going to be working. And I said, here, take my drink ticket, because I wanted to repay that favor. So when you do all the crazy, amazing things you do, and they're thanking you in that moment, they're like, wow, this is awesome. Yay, I got the house. Thank you so much. Of course, we're going to be gracious and say, absolutely. I'm so happy. This is what I do. And I'm so glad we're able to do this for you. By the way, I have just a small favor to ask. Sure, what? Anything. Well, you're going to be moving soon, and you know a lot of people. Is there one person that you can think of today that I should meet? Maybe they're thinking of buying or selling. Maybe they just have a question they want to ask me. A great contact, someone I should get to know in the community. Can you think of one person? So see, when you've just gone above and beyond, and they feel they owe you something, and you ask for that referral, they're about 50% more likely to actually come up with one to give you, right? It's kind of crazy, kind of amazing. So it's good to say, oh, I'm so glad, not a problem, my pleasure, all that's fine. Oh, hey, by the way, a small favor, may I ask of you, right? So do drop that 5-star service into every conversation that you possibly can. And along the way, or at the end of that transaction, if they say, no, it wasn't 5-star, this isn't 5-star. I know it's hard. I know we want to get defensive, but take a minute, calm yourself, and say, really? Well, I am sorry to hear that. I really want to know what you feel is wrong. Can you share that with me? I value your opinion, and I want to hear it. And then as you hear it, you might go, that's a little crazy. Hey, but don't be defensive. Wow, you really wanted a call from me every single day versus the 2 or 3 times a week that I contacted you. I'm sorry I didn't ask. I'm sorry I didn't clarify that with you. For most customers, 2 or 3 times a week is enough. Evidently for you, it was not. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to make a note in your file that that's what you need. And you have my commitment. If you allow me to work with you again, the next time you sell your home and purchase one, I'm going to make sure I adhere to that standard. So drop that 5-star service, ask them if you've delivered it. If they complain, take it graciously, look for that grain of salt or truth in it, and then make the corrections. And sometimes they're a lot, and it feels nice sometimes to vent. And yet, speaking badly about a customer, whether verbally, email, or in text, it really shouldn't occur in your office, with your team, yourself. It doesn't make you feel better, right? It just makes you relive that bad moment or event. And an email is really dangerous because what if you hit the wrong button and send it directly to the client? But whether it's email or text, it's out there forever. So I always think, I read a book that said, when you're saying things or you're writing emails or you're writing texts, ask yourself, if I ever had to go to court on this file, would I want this communication as part of the record? In a way, just like a self-check, right? Not that you're actually going to go to court, but just saying, hey, is this something I really want to put out into the universe? Or do I need to be more gracious in my communication? And I feel like this is a standard we should all stick with, that at least by the end of the business day, every email, every text, every voicemail has been returned, even if just to say, I will be back to you by tomorrow. I've often noticed too that if we don't do that, now they're calling, texting multiple people in your world. They might call the lender, they might call the escrow, they might call you. Everything is blowing up because they didn't hear from you, right? So take a moment and just remember, when you do that handoff to a team member or an affiliate or a solution is given, do that follow-up, make sure they've got all that they need. And if you promise to get back to them or handle something for them, do you always follow through? Because if you're not going to follow through, then don't make the promise. And that's why that's saying under promise and over deliver, right? Well, and you're going to make a mistake. We all do. We're flying fast and furious. There's so many things going on in every day. And once in a while, you are going to screw something up. There's something, though, in business called relationship capital. See, when they know that you care, when you've treated them well, when you've done a really good job, but now you screw up on one thing, they may not be happy, and yet they are much more likely to be forgiving because, see, you created that relationship capital. And if you make that mistake, just own it. I apologize. I did not keep my commitment to get that document to you. That absolutely was my mistake, and it will not happen again. Right? Most people are cool with that. Also remember that sometimes where you might get the lower score on the rating, it might not even have anything to do with how you handled that transaction or how you behaved. It might have more to do with the fact that they just didn't understand the process. I remember conducting some focus groups for buyers years ago, and something kind of shocking came out to me. I kept hearing in these groups that they thought that if they offered full price, the seller would automatically take it. Well, we know that's not true. I think most buyers now know that's not true. But that made me think that if I don't have the conversation with them of what are the options the seller has, they can counter, they can reject, they can do all kinds of things, then who are they going to blame if that full price offer doesn't get accepted, right? They're going to blame me. So what is it about the process that they don't understand? that if we don't make that clear to them, they're going to hold you responsible. And I think in all of the madness of what we all have going on right now, it's easy to get overwhelmed when you hear a webinar like this and say, okay, but what do I do? Where do I begin? I would say simply pick one thing. Pick one thing that's an improvement or a change you could make effective immediately. And you know what? Maybe your one thing is to say, I'm going to return all my emails and voicemails every day by 5 o'clock. Maybe that's your one thing. Maybe your one thing is, I'm going to start dropping that 5-star conversation into everything I do. Or maybe it's, I'm going to ask every customer and client, describe to me your ideal service scenario. And then I'm going to make notes of that, and I'm going to live up to that. So pick one thing. And then just for fun this weekend, be thinking about your 2 words. What describes what you believe in? What describes what you do? And then let's don't forget theory of reciprocity, right? We want to use that theory of reciprocity as that moment to ask for a referral or to ask for a review. So if you guys need to talk more to me, if you're making your plans for the rest of the year and you feel you're going to need a coach, you're going to need some help, you know how to get to me. Just scan that QR code. Gary and Ron will reach out to you. And I think this is just such an, in a way, an inspiring time that we can be the cream of the crop, right? We can perfect our skills. We can get on top of these new policies and procedures that are coming at us, starting to trickle in, but by mid-July. And we can be the best at our flawless and gracious service so that they never want to leave you. You are their customer for life, and they give you that outstanding review. So time to upgrade, right? It's showtime. And what we'll do in a few weeks is we're going to bring on that guest, and we're going to break it down, and we're going to talk about how to get more of those reviews. And absolutely, guys, we're going to deliver this recording to you. Just give us a day or two. Hey, Judy, you're right. I love Trader Joe's. I think they do deliver outstanding service. And what's great is they're not that expensive, right? But they've got happy people, which tells me they must have good leadership. I love Judy's line, kindness, service, and gratitude. Nan says trust and confidence. So guys, great words. I love all of these things that you've typed in. And just the fact that you are here today, again, tells me that you, more than most, care about the service and the standards that you deliver. So congratulations for that. And so happy to have you here today. And I'll see you soon. We'll have more great topics coming and new scripts on the way very soon that will help you navigate some of the changes in the NAR ruling. So I'm working on that for you all. All right, guys, have a great day. I will talk to you soon. Bye-bye.